Are you worried about the impact of growth in consumption and population?
Absolutely. Not so much in an Australian context, but when I think of the sub-Saharan African context, I am worried because as we see an explosion in population, what we'll see is an overconsumption of resources in certain regions. And with an overconsumption of resources in certain regions, we'll start to see an explosion of conflict and mass displacement. And from with mass displacement, we'll see regional instability. So I'm really worried about that. And I think that there are many mechanisms that countries should employ to ensure that their populations are that their economies are adapted to a changing climate, as well as ensuring that poverty is eliminated within their country. I think those two things can work in tandem. You can solve those two issues at the same time. And again, one of the key solutions, I think, in many reporting that we found is that the more that you educate them, the less that the population grows. And I think it's governments around the world should really focus on education as one of the many solutions to this issue.
Wonderful. Are you worried about the impact of growth in consumption and population?
Yes, absolutely. My concern when it comes to consumption and population comes mainly for the fact that on a global landscape, what we see is that a growth in consumption is going to lead to a much higher risk for our vulnerable communities, specifically in the Pacific, suffering from the impacts of what's going to be with the fossil fuel emissions or just the waste that we're going to see that has been pushed onto the global scale. For us, a part of the smaller island developing nation states, we are coming to see climate change refugees as a very real possibility. And when we see this continued growth, that's our reality. We know that we're going to house our residents from Samoa, from Tuvalu, from Vanuatu. We can see the way that the shorelines are rising and people are losing their homes. And away from loss and damage in a tangible sense, also the intangibles, culture, community, language, all of which is going to be lost. New Zealand is home to one of the largest Pacific Island diasporas. And for us, we hold a very strong responsibility to those communities. And as we see them at risk, we understand that we need to look after them, but also then we will need to be looked after.
Are you worried about the impact on the growth in consumption and population? Because we are seeing some people have different views on this topic. So what do you think?
As a biologist also, I know that the more we have population in the planet, more we need energy, more we need food, more we need species. So the problem is that the population is growing in a high speed. Why we know that the planet Earth is something which we can't add the capacity, we can't add the seas. So it needs to regulate the population growing. That is a big problem. We need to take care of it in the same level with the climate change, because we are not suffering only from the climate change, but also the food insecurity, especially in the global south. And now before to eat fruit, before to eat, we need food to come from biological laboratory, since the natural food is not enough to satisfy the population. So I'm very, very worried about the growth of the population actually.
Yeah. Do you have any solution you could give to the world in case they are worried? What solution do you know they can use?
Up to now, there is not international organization who is taking care about the population. There is not. We have UNFCCC for climate change. We have an organization for our earth. So many organizations for agriculture, but there is no international organization who is following the growth of the population. So I propose world leaders to think about that so that we can see how to regulate those things. Because now we are 8 billion in 8 billion in 30 years. Nigeria will have the population equal to United States right now. So that is a big problem we need to solve.
Are you worried about the growth in consumption and population?
Well, I can say yes and no. And what I am more concerned about is unsustainable consumption. But as far as our population is growing and we consume natural resources, food and whatever in a sustainable and equitable way, I don't have a problem. My problem is about the nature of the consumption. If it is sustainable, I'm good. If it is unsustainable, that is where the problem is.
Are you worried about the impact of the growth in consumption and population?
Well, thank you very much. With someone who is a justice, I look for justice in the activism I do, and I defend human rights.
Yeah.
It varies. I am worried if consumption is luxurious and it's also destroying our planet. But I'm also careful not to contribute to things like period poverty, because women in communities and in rural communities actually need to use the pads and the sanitary towels that are produced to go through their days in a month of periods.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we are telling them do not consume periods, don't do this, people come from communities where there is a water scarcity.
Yeah.
So if you're telling them to use reusable sanitary pads and sanitary napkins, then you're actually contributing to period poverty.
Yeah, yeah.
That having been mentioned, we should know that consumption should sustainable consumption works with communities that have the capacity to cut their emissions but refuse and instead consume vigorously and with selfishness while destroying the planet in the same time.
Yeah.
So if we can't afford to actually live a sustainable life and to cut out most of the luxuries that contribute to these emissions and contribute to the destruction of this planet, please consume responsibly.
Yeah.
Please wean yourself and your family off these luxurious things that contribute to the destruction of the planet. Unless it is a necessity.
You worried about the impact of the growth in consumption and population to you?
Obviously, yes. Not just because we are one of the biggest population country right now on Earth, but also we are one of the highest population of youth right now. More than 60% of the population of India is youth. So considering that, yes, I am also serving as a youth advisor for World Food Forum. So that means that I track the youth consumption, that I works on the healthy nutrition. And that's been a bit lack in India also. We have billions of people to feed.
Absolutely.
And we have billions of people to give them opportunity to work. And this is really worry. Being a developing country, we have other issues also. And we have been working. I mean, we have been working from our shares, but we need more support from the global North country, being one of the global South country.